Good morning and welcome back to Miniature Monday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Clan Direct Firestar from Catalyst Game Labs for use in your games of Battletech. Now, this was originally produced as part of the Battletech Mercenaries Kickstarter, and so relatively recently getting out to backers and few retailers who managed to get some early copies. But what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at just the miniatures themselves. We'll look at the actual sculpts. I'll let you know what I think of them. But we're also going to take a look at the art that inspired these mechs. What did they look like when they originally came out? And how has the art evolved over the past sometimes 30 plus years? So, before we get started, do make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I try to put out a few videos each week covering all sorts of tabletop gaming content. I do live streams where I paint miniatures or talk about different games, and I'd love for you to come along and see what we have to share. In addition, there are links down below. They go to DriveThruRPG or Amazon, and basically they are affiliate links, and they do help out the channel if you choose to use them. But either way, we're just happy that you're here and glad to have you along. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at our first miniature. So, first up, we have the Bane or Kraken. Actually, I think the official name is the Kraken, but in my head, it's stuck as the Bane. Now, in this version, we have its default configuration, which is 10 AC2s, but there are a couple of different versions. One, which is a big favorite of a friend of mine, that is 8 LRM 15 racks, I believe. Regardless, this thing can be a bit of a beast. Now, my friend also had provided me some 3D printed miniatures, which of this particular figure, which are interesting because they're almost identical. There's a few changes, but overall, I actually really do like this design and this sculpt in general. This particular version, it's nice and clean. It's actually, I think, a little bit better as far as definition goes compared to the 3D printed version. I actually like how the arms are a little bit thicker. The different barrels for the autocannons are a bit more pronounced. So overall, I really like this. It does look just like this juggernaut beast kind of a mech, and I'm a big fan. But where did it originate art-wise? So, for this one, we have from the original Jade Falcon sourcebook. This is our first appearance of the Bane. Now, if you asked me to pick this mech just based on this original art, I'll be honest, I probably would not have done so. It's a little bit on the thin side as far as the torso and these hip sections, which especially for a lot of early designs, that was really common. So it was kind of strange. It's like, how, like, you're going to say that this is a 100-ton beast and yet it can barely stand up. So anyways, not a horrible piece of art, especially for the time. Having at least like a mountain that it's coming across and a little bit of texture in the background, that is usually pretty unique. Now, its first technical readout was from 3058, I believe. No, 3055. So we had this version, which looked even more strange because you had legs sort of with the back canted chicken leg style, but then regular style knees, which is not how those legs work. So that's strange. The arms just don't look like they're sitting right. I mean, overall, I'm usually a fan of Dwayne Luce's art, and I believe he did all of the mechs for 3055. So this one's a little rough, but it's, yeah, it was, again, not necessarily the best design early on. Now, next up, we had the 3055 upgrade. I do not know who this artist is, but we're getting a little bit closer to the version that we have now. You have the triple segmented legs, the autocannons up in the arms. Looks like it's got some extra missile racks as well. This might be the Bane 2. Don't quote me on that. Coming in with some rotary autocannons. But overall, this is getting a lot more towards this current design, which I'm a much bigger fan of. Because then we get this one for our Ill Clan version. Now, in my last few videos, I know I've been doing a lot of complaining about how all of the mechs look like they come out of the same factory. And unfortunately, this does still, unfortunately, suffer from that. But overall, I actually think the design itself lends it a little bit more towards looking a bit more unique. So overall, I'm going to have to say that I like this art. I'm a big fan of how it's been translated into the figure. And, short answer, I'm going to get some of these on the field. I like it. So that is the Bane. Give me a second. We'll switch over to our next figure. All right. Now, next up, we've got the Highlander 2C. So if you are not familiar with that particular designation in Battletech, 2Cs basically mean it is an inner sphere design, but it is a successor version that was developed by the clans when they were living in exile. So essentially, you're going to see more or less the same style of design, but it will have some differences from the original mech. Now, this particular look, I actually got to say, I'm a big fan of. In general, I like the 2C styles, and the fact that it's the Highlander, which is already a nice looking design anyways. I like how this mech came out. My big issue with this one would have to be the antenna up on top of the head, which unfortunately is a product of the manufacturing process. To me, they're a little too thick, but if it's too thin in plastic, then they're going to be really soft and they're going to bend a lot. And so you have to size it up until it's at a point where it's going to remain stable, it's going to cure properly, the plastic will be able to get into the mold. So I understand the design choices, but I don't know. They almost look like rabbit ears, and that's kind of my main issue with it. Overall, the Gauss rifle in the right arm, I think, looks great. It's a nice kind of high-tech looking upgrade over that type of weapon normally. You've got the LRM racks in the chest, the lasers, and then you have the missiles on the left forearm. Now, that is where I'd have another complaint I'd have about this particular mech. It does just look a little too bulky. So even though that is the design for the mech, it just, I don't know, it just throws off the balance and the look for me. So not 100% on that, but overall, I do like the mech. It's, I will be honest, I am a big fan of the heavy and assault mechs in general. and this one is absolutely going to get into the painting queue and get taken care of. So now, with that said, let's take a look at its art. So, all right, our first one is from Tech Readout 3060. Now, this is an artist that I did not realize he's been working for Battletech for so long, but this is from Matt Plog. I'm going to have to give him an extra shout out, partly because of my friend Steve Cross. Steve actually uses him for his Project Zukov alternate universe setting. And so Matt has been doing this a long time. The art here overall looks pretty close to the mech that we have. My biggest complaint would obviously be here, this left forearm. It looks really, really small. But that's me being kind of nitpicky on, 26-year-old art. So I'm not really complaining too much about it. It's just something that I noticed. But what I also would point out is these individual doors covering up the missile racks. I actually think that's kind of interesting because they did that on the miniature as well. It's still got those multiple doors. So I'm not sure if those are all SRM4s or if that's just an artistic style choice. So I don't know. We'll look into it as we get closer in. Because we've got this piece of art from our Ilclan era, or the current mech. Now, as usual, it's pretty spot on for what we get out of the miniature. Overall, I mean, the pose is almost identical. The antenna, I actually do think in the drawing, clearly they are a bit larger than the previous version, but even still, doesn't look too bad. So definitely it had to have been a manufacturing choice to get those antenna as thick as they are on the figure. Obviously, it's still got these, large missile racks on the forearm that I'm not a fan of, but again, that's me being a little more nitpicky than I really need to. As far as did it come out of the same factory, I think we could say it's like the same company, but maybe the factory's a little bit down the road. So I'm kind of happy about that. It's still got the segmented armor plates, but it's not as obvious as it has been with other mechs. So overall, gonna have to say that I like this one as well. And yeah, I don't have anything else to say. So let's move on to the next one. All right, now next up we've got the Phoenix Hawk 2C. So again, we're continuing with the 2C options. So same story as last time. Basically, it's a clan version of an inner sphere mech. Now, at the time of the clan invasion, these were all technically second-line mechs, but they are also kind of fan favorites, so it's kind of obvious why it got made. Now, the Phoenix Hawk is known for its jump boosters on its back, and also being one of those that was copied from Macross during the early days of Battletech. Now, this is almost a complete rework, and you'll see when we get into the art, there's some interesting reasons for it. So overall, I mean, this is like, I think the best thing about this one is the fact that it absolutely doesn't look like it's out of the same factory. So right away, I'm gonna be a fan of this one. It does look a little bit odd, like the extra fins and like partial wings on the boosters, the double-barreled lasers on the torso. It's some interesting design choices, but it's not it's not bad. I do like it. Yeah, I really can't say much more than that. So let's take a look at the art. Now, the first one, this is one of my favorites. So this is from Tech Readout 3055. This was the first appearance of the Phoenix Hawk 2C, and in that particular technical readout, it was one of the few pages that, number one, the art was not done by Dwayne Luce, and number two, it was art commissioned from a completely outside company. I forget the name. I'm gonna have to look it up. Victor Musical Industries. Which, yeah, that's its own story. But essentially, because of that, because somebody else designed it, it actually was rendered as it became one of the unseen. Because with the whole issues with the unseen, essentially they decided, you know what, we're not going to deal with any art that wasn't produced in-house, meaning, people that were directly contracted to do the art. And so essentially this was, hidden away. But the thing is, this is classic 90s mecha anime look. And so all of these, I'm a big fan of this art. This was some of my favorite because I got into Battletech because of Robotech. And so seeing this style art brought the game a little closer to what had brought me to Battletech, even though none of the other mechs really had this styling to it. So overall, I'm a big fan of this one. Now, with this, we have the Project Phoenix, Phoenix Hawk 2C. And if you've been here before, you know I am not the biggest fan of Project Phoenix. This is okay. It's not a horrible design, especially for what it is. And what I actually think is kind of interesting is this is actually pretty close to the mech that we have today. It's got these winglets on the back, on the boosters themselves. It's got these twin cannons in the torsos. So it's definitely been modernized since this, but this is pretty close to what we're going to end up with for Ilclan. Now, we then had this from Tech Readout 3085. This is another matte plog piece of art. Again, still pretty close to the Project Phoenix design. Although I'd have to say it's cleaned up. If this was the one that was in Project Phoenix instead of the previous one... no, I do not see the artist there. I probably would be a lot more accepting of it, but this one's pretty darn close. And then finally, we get our Ilclan era. So for the Ilclan era, again, the miniature is almost spot on. Again, so far, I have to say I'm very happy with this particular set. These mechs have a bit more unique styling to them. So it's not perfect. Again, there's still that same factory mentality, but it's way less noticeable on these mechs so far. So overall, again, I'm gonna have to give this one a positive outlook. It's not my favorite out of the set. I mean, obviously we've just looked at 3 of them, but it is not a bad design. It does not remind me of a Phoenix Hawk, but it definitely is. It's definitely a nice design for a mech in general, and it's got some unique stylings to it as well. So overall, I'm going to have to say I like the Phoenix Hawk 2C. All right, now fourth up, we've got the Grizzly. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about this particular mech, uh, but it's definitely okay. I keep repeating myself. I mean, kind of happens when you're looking at, big stompy robots. I mean, let's be honest. At some point, it's a big stompy robot. What else are you going to say? But overall, with all of the mechs from this set so far, they've all looked unique. They've all, had some very interesting stylings. This one, it's got this really low cockpit. I mean, the fact that it's almost to the hips, I think, is a very, very interesting design choice. The arms are, I would say, are a little large. They kind of remind me of the Sagittaire, where they're almost cartoonish in size. So it throws it off a little bit, but I think if they'd had the sizing a little bit more appropriate, I think I would have been much happier with this mech. Overall, it's not bad. Just the arms, like I said, kind of throw out that cartoon vibe. I like the jump packs on the back of the calves. It's got kind of this, the right there on that hip, the upper leg. It's kind of got that sort of insect segmented, armor plating. Overall, I mean, there's a lot going on here that I like, that are just some nice, fun designs, and definitely give this thing a nice, unique look. So overall, I'm positive, but I would have to say that this one's probably going to be my least favorite out of the set. It is not a bad design. I'm not trying to say anything about that. I'm obviously not talking about the capabilities of the unit, because I don't usually. But for the most part, from a looks perspective, it's my least favorite out of the box, but I'm still happy with it, just because the interesting design choices and the fact that it looks different from the things that they've been putting out up until now. So let's take a look at its art. All right, so first up, we've got this piece of art from the Invading Clans sourcebook. So obviously, it's a very early piece of art. Would have been like the early 90s, but it does still have the the sort of lower cockpit. It's got the LRM-10 in the left torso. Now, the arms obviously are very, very different. This one, they've definitely changed it a lot. At least in the arm segments. It's also kind of interesting because it looks like the upper torso is almost dead on like the original clan mech pieces of art out of the original 3050. But then they pivoted the lower, like the hips and the legs a little bit. So gives this art an interesting look, especially considering the time frame that it came out of. We then get this version. Now this is Dwayne Luce. I think this is 3055 or 3058. Okay, so it looks like this is pretty much where we're getting the cartoon look for the arms. You've still got the missile rack up in the shoulder, going for a little bit more of a beast creature kind of look on the face. It's still got that low cockpit like I like, but you've got this really massive forearm for the left arm guns, and you've got the really massive kind of shield plate, probably a PPC on the right, but then you do have that segmented armor on the upper legs. So we're getting close to the piece of art that we have now, but you know, unfortunately, Mr. Loose is the one that brought the semi goofy arms, is what I'm gonna call them. You all know how these roll. Kind of make it up a little bit as I go along. Yeah, it's not the worst, but yeah, I'm the arms are kind of what lose me on this. All right, we then get our Ill Clan version, and pretty much this is what we get. Now, the art definitely has that, same factory look to it, but I think it translated a little bit better into the miniature than the art. Which is also interesting because the arm cannons don't look as pronounced as they seem to look in the miniature. Like the left arm that's coming around on the miniature right now seems a lot bigger and bulkier than this arm, in the art. This sort of strapped on cannon on the right arm doesn't seem as big and bulky either. I mean, it still has kind of these armor plates to it, but the right arm that you can see right there definitely looks a lot bigger. So it's kind of interesting. This one did not translate quite the same into the miniature. Different things seem emphasized. Not enough for me to honestly be upset over. Just kind of interesting how it came out. So I'm still going to leave this as kind of my least favorite of the actual box, but overall, it's fine. It's a decent design that will be fun to paint up. So that is the Grizzly. All right, now for our last one, we have the Rifleman 2C. Now, production-wise, I'm already seeing some problems. Obviously, the laser cannons or autocannons, whatever they are not perfectly straight. I can try fixing them with the hot water trick. If you're not familiar with what that is, if you've got bent plastic, you get water really, really hot, almost boiling, not quite. Soak it. It'll soften up the plastic so you can move it around, get it to the position you want, and then you submerge it in ice water, and hopefully it stays. So I'm a little disappointed that this came out this way. In general, I like this mech, but I'm actually a little disappointed to see production errors like that. You don't normally see that with the Battletech figures. Usually it's just pull it out of the box and everything's fine. Okay. Obviously that is not a guarantee. This one's also got some stronger mold lines around the legs. I haven't noticed any others as it's been going around. So, production wise, I'm actually a little disappointed. I didn't notice that while I was taking this out and getting things set up for the recording. So yeah, that's going to be frustrating to have to work around. Overall, the design isn't bad. I mean, it's a Rifleman. I like the addition of the sensor dish as opposed to the sensor wing on the original Rifleman. The other thing that's a bit confusing, is right there underneath the dome is where the cockpit is, and it's sort of undefined. Actually, no, it's not sort of. It's completely undefined. It looks like just a blob. I'm not sure that piece got sculpted at all. And if so, that's really frustrating. I mean, if that's what it was, I I think that's what it's supposed to look like, but I'm not a fan. I hate to say this, but I had assumed that this was going to be one of my favorites, but I'm actually going to put this as my least favorite in the package. I still like the Rifleman. I just don't like this particular figure. And that's really frustrating. Like I don't think I would ever like I'll take stuff just because I'm like I think it'll be fun to try this, and so I'll just take a mech, and I'm not sure I would take this one. Just because I'm not a big fan of how the mech came out. Luckily it's not suffering from same factory syndrome. Um, it it does look nice. It does look unique. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not a fan of this one, which is frustrating because I love this piece of art. This looks so goofy. Like, the cockpit looks like a face. I don't know why they did that, but I like it. Also, this giant sensor suite up around the cockpit, I think, is fantastic. It's got that dynamic anime styling. I mean, this almost looks like it's a person, as opposed to a battle mech. And I don't know why I've always liked that from this one. So I realize the contradictions here. Don't get me wrong. It's just a personal thing. But don't forget, I am coming at this with like over 30 years of nostalgia. So there's clearly deficiencies in the art. Some of the style, like this join piece right here between the torso and the hips, is completely impractical. You know, the fact that the cockpit looks like a face, it's just goofy. But overall, I still like it. So yes, I like the art. I'm disappointed in the figure. I ruin everything, as I so frequently tell my wife. All right, next up we've got this version from the Battle of Tukid. Now, I am a big fan of this version. This almost looks exactly like what we have now for the Ill Clan art. Again, giant sensor dish, face for a cockpit, the autocannon style gun barrels, and then this is a lot closer with the feet. Actually, I'd say the feet, the legs are very much like the original Rifleman legs, out of Macross. So I don't know. Anyways, this is a good one. We then got this from Matt Plog for, I think this is Project Phoenix. Sorry, Matt. Oh, no, this is Tech Readout 3085, so probably, because, this is Project Phoenix. Oh, okay. So, even though I generally like Matt's stuff, I'm going to have to not really be a fan of this one. Tech Readout 3085. It's still got the dish, but it's very, very much a redesign. And it's not necessarily a bad design on its own. It just doesn't say Rifleman to me. I think the fact that it's mostly just single barrel arms, I can see the second weapon underneath it. But usually it's got the twin long barreled weapons. So that kind of throws it off for me. Again, not a bad piece of art, but I don't know, it just doesn't say Rifleman 2C to me. We then get this from Project Phoenix, which, yeah, so this is 2010. This is 03? So 7 years earlier. Okay, well, I got that order mixed up. Sorry, folks. This isn't bad. I can see where Matt took a lot of his design cues, especially for the cockpit and this little center torso piece. But I do like the fact that this has, you know, the double-barreled weapons. I don't mind that they're different thicknesses, but I do like that they're at least the same length. So it definitely has a much more Rifleman look to it. Now, finally, we've got the Ill-Clan version. So let's start off with the cockpit. So clearly, the cockpit's supposed to look like this blob. You know, you can see that there. It did not translate well into the miniature. We've got this antenna on top of the sensor dish. The dish looks fine. Yeah, overall, I realize I'm being kind of nitpicky here. I usually am. But I actually think I like the art better than how the miniature came out. And the miniature definitely... Yeah, there's a lot of things that just went wrong on the miniature. The miniature is officially my least favorite, although the art is actually pretty good. I have no issues with this particular piece of art. It looks like a Rifleman. I would have no problems calling it a clan version of a Rifleman. I just am not a fan with how this figure came out. And then again, if you look at that cockpit right there, like, whoever did the 3D version to send over to manufacturing, again, they just left the cockpit a blob. So I'm gonna have to say not a fan. So, all right. I was a little bit surprised. I was not expecting the Rifleman 2C to be my least favorite, but it officially is. I'm definitely going to take a Grizzly over this guy. But that's my choice. So, what about you? Did you get the direct Firestar? Do you disagree with me? Put it down in the comments. Tell me where I'm wrong. I'd love to hear from you. Obviously, it's nice to be getting more official mechs. I already have a massive collection, so even though I do have access to all of them, I will be honest, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm going to buy a ton more. So it's going to be interesting as the line continues to expand. Obviously, I've got quite a few more reviews to come out. I will definitely cover all of the mechs for you. So do make sure you're subscribed so that you can come back, hit that notification bell so that you know when they're live. But otherwise, folks, thanks so much for watching. I realize this was a bit of a longer one. That's on me. But I do appreciate your time. So if you enjoyed the video, do give it a thumbs up. I'd absolutely appreciate it. And share it with all of your Battletech friends. Let them know. That way they can make a decision on if this is a pack that they'd like to pick up. So, thanks for watching, folks, and we'll talk to you next time.